Hello there, my name's Jason Bossel from OpenText, and welcome to a short introduction to the product Core Data Discovery and Risk Insights. This product is designed to scan and analyze your unstructured and structured data sources, looking for potentially sensitive and high value data, or even data which is perhaps lower value data which you should consider deleting from these sources. The product is organized into three main sections. Connect allows you to connect to those data sources and decide how you want to analyze that data. The Analyze section shows you the results of that analysis. And then the third section, Manage, allows you to take action on that data, whether it is purely on just reporting, or maybe you want to move some of that data to the appropriate location, or leave it as an existing location, but take some form of protective action, such as masking the data or applying protection labels. Let's look at these three sections in turn. Inside the Connect section, we analyze the data without copying the data from its existing location. We do that through agents. And agents are organized in clusters so we can manage that scanning process efficiently. And we put the agents in the appropriate location as close to where the data is located. We support a number of different data sources. Anything based on a file system using the SMB protocol. Variations of Exchange and SharePoint, whether on-premise or in the cloud, and a number of content management systems. In the structured world, we support the main database platforms as well. When you analyze these data sources, we organize how you want to analyze that through the object called datasets. And when you analyze the data, you can decide whether you want to metadata scan, which is useful as a quick scan if you are trying to look for just the metadata about the file, such as looking for redundant, obsolete, and trivial data. If you want to do a full scan of the data, so we actually look inside the content of the files. And to do that, we decide how we want to look inside the content. So if you select the appropriate grammar set that's relative to your region, this will select the appropriate grammars. And these grammar rules look for addresses, look for email addresses. So the basic things like that, but also more complex elements that involve validating the data using the appropriate algorithms to whether something's a credit card, whether something's a driving license, or even passport numbers. When we analyze that data, we actually, with the full scan mode, we touch every single file. If the data source is very large, sometimes it's useful to use a smart scan. A smart scan randomly samples the documents, and this means we can get results much quicker. So we don't actually touch every single file, we sample inside the repository. And this allows us to see the structure of the data in a much quicker approach. So here we've got a SharePoint site library, and inside the site library, I can see the amount of documents. So the bigger the box, the more documents are there, but also the density of the sensitive data. So finance data contains quite some highly dense sensitive data, but lower inside the other repositories. So maybe I want to start my full analysis in the finance section first. We can also define targets and file protection labels to take some of those actions a little bit later on. The grammars that I explained over here are organized inside the Manage Grammar section, and you can see we've got really quite a wide support from many different countries and many different languages. You can also decide about how you want to mask some of that data. So if we're going to do some of that cleaning action later on, we can decide how we want to mask credit cards, for example. We can also do exclusion rules. So if you're not interested in perhaps email addresses from your own organization, here I've excluded anything with OpenText as an email address. So I'm only looking for customer emails rather than our own email addresses. Each one of these grammars is associated with a tag that allows us to apply a weighting label. So, of course, not all these pieces of sensitive data have the same weight. A credit card perhaps is highly sensitive, but a date of birth is maybe partially sensitive. So we can assess a risk score associated with a document based on the actual weighting label. You may also join a few of these things together. So you may say a date of birth and a name. If both of them are in the document, I might want to make it more sensitive than if the date of birth is on its own inside the document. You can also say use the confidence scores as well. So perhaps you want to say look something specifically where you're even more confident that there's a credit card document in the document. Okay, so let's go and have a look at the results of the analysis. Here we go into this second section here, which is the Analyze section, and we've got a number of different dashboards to look at the high-level overview of your data, different modeling techniques to show you the financial risk. We can show you trends of how things have changed over time, about how your data is changing and the level of sensitivity, where that data is located, or perhaps which department it locates in, so which data sets are associated with a particular department. You can also see different trends on the different documents, or how different we get the number of credit cards growing inside the organization, or drill down directly onto those documents, and we can see why a particular document is a particular high value item. So here we've got an invoice. You can see it's got email addresses, credit card numbers, and we've identified that this credit card number is inside this document, and we've masked this data out, and so this is ripe really for perhaps creating a mass version of this document. We need to create a clean copy of this document that can be shared more widely inside our organization. So this is one of the actions that we can then take inside the Manage section. The Manage section are organized into workspaces that are in three main categories. Reporting categories, so whether we're looking for a risk assessment of a department, looking on a particular topic such as a freedom of information request, or looking for individuals sensitive data, so looking for an individual sensitive data, or we can take some form of action. We've found some of this data that needs to be moved to an archive, moved to records, or cleanup is basically we don't need to keep this data anymore. It's old, it's duplicate, so let's remove that from the sources. Or we can take a protective action. These protective actions such as creating a mass copy of the document, applying protection labels. So let's have a quick look at one of these examples. Let's look at this finance department. We've done a risk assessment of the finance department. This workspace shows you the same analysis results, but here we've got a timeline view, so we can see potentially there's some old files here. This is perhaps we should be cleaning some of this data up. Do we need to keep data from before 2010? It's also got some potentially sensitive data, and we can look at the individual tags associated. We've got some credit cards in some of these documents. And this template has organized them into categories: financial, legal, regulatory, health, government IDs. These categories allow us to put things into workbooks, and these are all using those algorithms that we showed you at the start to find that data. So we might want to take the financial data. We need to keep that data. Let's move that to the archive so we can send that to the archive location. We may want to, perhaps things with regulated PI, we might want to create mass versions of these documents using the same masking rules that I showed you before. So here we might want to move this, maybe send this to the AI inventory. So we create mass versions so that if we're using any AI tools, then we can make sure that that data is not exposed. Of course, we might want to say, well, we don't want to keep anything with health data in the finance department, so perhaps we need to delete this, so we can delete all the documents associated with that. Once these actions are taken, you can go through an approval cycle and then produce a report of all the actions that were taken, and there's a full audit trail of all these actions that were completed. So let's just go back and summarize what we've done here. We've connected to a number of different data sources. We've decided how we want to analyze them, appropriate for our region. We've showed the high-level results of the analysis, and we've taken the appropriate action on that data. Thank you very much. Bye for now.